one of these. Of course not. This thing is 5 years old. Now everyone's got one of these. Can you imagine how much genius and focus it took to turn a music player into a handheld computer phone GPS remote control for everything in life in just 5 years? Seriously, the thousands of people who made this thing had to solve thousands of problems that literally could not have been solved 5 years ago. That's what people can do when they're motivated to find solutions to problems. But the problems we've been busy solving are not the problems that most need solving. So much focus has gone into faster, cheaper, newer that we've actually lost ground on things like safer, healthier, and more fair. It's as if we're getting better.
Hey everyone, it's Kim Barnes-Jefferson here, and welcome to FabFit TV. I am your host, and I help women to have the courage to break free of the diet mindset so they can live a life of balance, peace, and harmony when it comes to diet and exercise. So today, I'm going to talk about the crux of my beliefs around diets, about building in the structured flexibility. Because so many times I see women, people, get caught in these like rules, caught in the ruts of like, in order to be lean and fit and healthy, I gotta follow this track. And sometimes they get so caught in the track that whenever, a life event happens, they're like left floundering, left trying to figure out, do I go left? Do I go right? Like, what the heck do I do? What do I eat? And I remember there was a woman that I was working with, and she was so like, put on those blinders on for so long, and she went to her boyfriend's house, and, her mom's like, oh, do you have any allergies? Like, what can I serve you? Ba, 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 ba. And she literally came down with a list of everything she was allergic to because she was afraid to eat. She was afraid to overeat. So she just said, oh, if you just make me, a Caesar salad, I'm fine. And I think they dated for like 3 or 4 years. And every single time, like regardless of the event, she just had a Caesar salad there. And, God loved the mom who was just like, I'll just make anything you want, because I'm old school. Whatever I'm serving, you eating. Unless you're deathly ill. And, I feel nowadays so many people can use the I have an allergy thing. I can feel like that's like a pass to not eat things, or I feel like it's what people will just arbitrarily start cutting things out of their diet. Like, I'm off of gluten this week, or, I'm no this, no that, without really having a framework, it's just, and I hear it all the time from my clients, like they haven't been consistent, and they're like, Kim, what do you think? Is it the gluten? No, I think it's the 40 drinks that you had and the pizza. It had nothing to do with the gluten. It had all to do with the consistency. And we want to find this silver bullet and say, that's it. Kind of if it was a crime, you would be like, Colonel Mustard did it in the kitchen with a cleaver, right? We want to point to something and say, where a lot of the times I find where we all struggle is with the consistency. And one of my mentors says, and it's, spot on, easy as earned, right? To get to consistency, you have to have great habits. And once you have great habits, you have great routines. And once you have routine, that's unbreakable. And, I've talked about routines on this show before, and I'll link it up in the show notes. But if you think about a routine, there's certain routines that you guys have right now that you don't really think about and you don't break. Do you brush your teeth before you wash your face? Do you put on your pants before you put on your shirt? So what's the order? And that's a routine. So what I'm trying to get at is that's how getting healthy and fit has to turn into. It has to just be like an automatic, like a light switch. Like, this is what I do. And it's not heavy lifting, because what I find with people follow diets, it's all about the heavy lifting. They're so focused on what I need to do and the rules, and I can't break a rule. You know, these are the same people who will speed down the highway at 80 miles an hour. But I can't break the rules of the diet. I can't break the rules of the diet. So I want to kind of like walk through a structured diet. And then I want to talk about structured flexibility, because when you are able to flow into that flexibility place, that's when it gets good. That's when you feel healthy. That's when you feel free, right? No one wants to be held hostage by their diet. And I feel so many people are like that. So here's where, you know, I hear it all the time. I've fallen off the wagon. And when you put your path so straight and narrow, it's really easy to fall off the wagon. It's really easy to have a life event. It's really easy to have, you know, a barbecue. It's really easy to have a birthday. It's really easy to have all these things that derail you from success. And so what I want you to think about is write down what causes you to fall off the wagon. And, you know, I always kind of say your lifestyle is like the TV show CSI, right? You know, the CSI people, they show up on the scene and they're just gathering all the evidence. And they see some broken glass over here, they see a footprint over there, they see a fingerprint over there, and they're just all taking it in, and then they're processing it to figure out who did it. So I want you to think about when we're going through I've fallen off the wagon, I want you to kind of say what caused you to fall off the wagon, right? Because what I see is that people put themselves in a box that's so small that you can't wiggle at all. And that when you wiggle, you lose your stuff. And when you lose your stuff, you're like, well, I lost my stuff, so I might as well just go continue to dive off of that cliff. When in reality, what happened was you lacked a solid plan. And what I teach my clients is that a plan doesn't make you want to cheat on it, right? A plan is like you're dating and you're in a committed relationship, but that committed relationship isn't, he's not locking you in the basement, right? And that's what sometimes I feel people think diets do. They lock you in the basement and you can only have what's in that room and everything else is off limits. And so when you finally break free of that diet, you're running around like a wild animal. So what I'm going to talk about is how do you build this healthy framework so that you have that flexibility, you have that balance, you have that freedom. Because I lived in this box for a really long time and it sucked. And every single time that I allowed myself, one or two steps out of that box, I lost it. And then it takes a while to rein it all back in and get back on the horse. And so it's been a dance, if you will, to get back to where I'm, I feel like it's over the last few years that I've gotten into this rhythm that I know and I feel comfortable and confident of my choices. So, first of all, what is a structured diet? So I want you to think about, diets that have the names. So Weight Watchers, Keto, Whole30, South Beach. Those are structured diets where there's a manual and it says if you are following the keto diet or if you're following the Whole30 diet, these are the rules. Break these rules and perish, right? So when you look at that rule book, you need to read it and say, can I follow this for the next, I'm going to say 6 months. Can I follow this for the next 6 months and feel like I'm living a healthy life? And then I also want you to say, and if you say yes, I'm going to, probe a little deeper. And I'm going to say, okay, in the next 6 months, do you foresee you having a birthday party to go to, a graduation party to go to, some type of celebratory thing where you're not in control of the food. And based on the rules, do you feel you can go to this party and not lose your stuff? Whoa, oh, ah, ooh, ah, right? You start to tap dance. You start to wonder, and what are you going? Where's the leeway that you're going to give yourself when you have these events? Because there are going to come up. Here we are in September. I can't believe I'm about to say this out loud, but we have the holidays, right? And so all of a sudden, you're at Aunt so-and-so's house and she's wondering why you're not having her like world famous casserole or her world famous apple pie. And you're like, oh, I'm on a diet, woe is me. Or you're having it because you haven't had it for months and months and months and you're eating the whole damn pie. So I want you to think about when you have that kind of structure, are you going to give yourself some wiggle room for those events? And if you do give yourself some wiggle room, are you going to put some parameters around it? Because what I encourage my clients is that, sure, follow this structured diet, but I want you to give yourself some wiggle room that, for your anniversary, you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to have a glass of wine and I'm going to have some dessert and I'm going to go to bed and wake up the next morning and there's no harm, no foul. There's no making it up. There's no guilt. There's no shame. You went in with a plan. And as a newbie, if you're someone who, is trying to figure out what's going to work for you, a structured plan could be a great foundation for you. And I say it's a foundation because I want you to eventually graduate. So, if you think about a house, you build the foundation and then you kind of stack the rest of the house on top of it. Or if you were, say going to some type of educational facility, you would start with like the basic courses. And so I want you to think about a structured diet as a basic course. And so if you feel like if this is something you could do for like 6 months, then this, that's your entry level program. And so what I tell people is try these diets for 30 days and do a check-in. Are you getting any results? Are you getting headaches? Is there any type of physical, good, bad, ugly, what's happening? And do that check-in. And that way you can then start, this is where you then start to make your tweaks, if you will. And if it's not hitting the mark, if you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to cheat on it, oh my God, I hate it, then it's time to move on and try something new. And that's when I always say to people, that's the beauty of working with a coach, because we know that the questions to ask, so we can ask you the questions to kind of help you navigate what's going to be a good program for you to follow. And when you get stuck, in the book, sometimes they don't really have like, I got stuck, or you're on some random Facebook page with some Yahoo that you don't even know who's telling you that, you need to do 500 jumping jacks to make up for your cheese doodles that you had the night before. So the thing I also, the plus of a structured diet, it helps with proper nutrition, but you have to, I guess, let me be qualified. It helps with proper nutrition if you're able to understand the ingredients of foods, you understand the nutritional values of food. I do have some reservations about the keto diet. I think that unless you're doing it for a specific health reason and you are monitored closely by a medical professional, it's not something that you can just like do for the rest of your life. I feel that there is some long-term health issues that haven't really been exposed yet. And I think they will come out when people have been doing it for a long period of time. The other thing about a structured diet, you learn balance, right? That it's not, all my chips are in or all my chips are out. because that's where a lot of people fall into that yo-yo place. Like, I'm totally like, 2 feet in on this diet, or I've totally lost my stuff and I'm not doing it anymore. Because that's where I want you to think about. A lot of people will go on these like juice cleanses, and they'll go on these sugar detoxes, and or they'll just randomly cut out different foods out of their diet. And what I want to say is, like, when you vilify one food, you're negating all the rest of your behavior, because maybe sugar isn't your downfall. I do believe we all have trigger foods, right? So I have a client who her trigger foods are chips and salsa. You put chips and salsa in front of her, she's like shaking the bag in her mouth and licking the jar of the salsa. Where other people, they're like, oh, I can have a couple chips and I'm good. So I want you to think about, is it truly sugar? Or are there other foods that are your trigger foods? For me, my trigger food is ice cream, but I'm okay with other sugar-based foods. Like, that doesn't set me off. So I want you to think about, again, during your investigation, what sets you off? What is it that causes you to get derailed? And then, from there, that's when you can really have a good conversation with a professional, because that's way we can say, okay, so chips and salsa. So at this point, we're going to take chips and salsa out of your house. It's something that you could eat out, but not in your house. So for me, that's ice cream. I can't buy it. If it's in my house, we all say, oh, I'm going to have a bite. And then that bite, next thing you know, you've eaten the whole jar. So I want you to think about, are there those foods? So that it's not a matter of like, oh, I got to go on this sugar detox, or I have to go on this juice cleanse. It is a matter of, I need to clean out the foods that cause me to lose it. And so you just don't buy them in the house, because why tempt yourself? And so many people will say, well, what about my kids? And I'm like, there's so many other foods for your kids that won't set you up for failure. I challenge you to set yourself up for success, because willpower will only take you but so far, right? I say willpower is that friend, and we all have that friend who will say, hey, we're going to do something, and then the day of the event, they're like, oh, girl, I can't go. That's willpower. And, when people say to me, oh, I don't have willpower. No, you don't have skills. You don't have the skills to set yourself up for success. And in order to do that, you should not put yourself in harm's way. And so it's kind of like right now, the date of this being filmed is September 11th. And there's a hurricane coming towards the North Carolina shore. And there's always that one or two people who don't heed the warning of, hey, evacuate because we can't save you. And they're in their house sitting on their roof, right? So this is the equivalent of you sitting on your house on your roof and not, setting yourself up for success. Because I teach my clients how to fish, right? Because I could give you a fish, I could give you a meal plan, and I used to do that. But what I found is when I started to teach my clients about how does your body respond, what are your trigger foods, then I was able to, once I was able to do that, then my clients started to have better success. And they were able to go to restaurants and look at the menu and say, okay, I could have A, I could have B, I could have C, I could have D, and not have any guilt, shame, or overeating, right? They just went to a restaurant and they weren't like that girl who's like, I'll just have ice on the side with a glass. Because we all have those speed bumps in our lives. We have events. We have life, we have kids, we have travel. And I want you to think about, as you go through your own investigation, how are you going to handle that? Because it's not in a anal kind of way, right? It's not being anal. It's just going through with forethought, intention. That's the word. Intention. It's going through with intention and saying, okay, here are my intentions when I eat. And when you set the intention, you set the stage. And for those of you who don't know what intentions are, so you go in with, this is what you decide what you want the outcome to be before it starts. Does that make sense? So, for example, I will last weekend or 2 weeks ago was a holiday, and my husband and I had this like adventure day planned, and I said, okay, this is our adventure day. This is the food outcome that I want for the day, and I knew that I was going to have a couple of drinks, and I knew we were going to the beach, and this one place that we love to get lobster rolls. I'm like, I'm gonna have a couple of drinks, I'm gonna have a lobster roll, and I'm gonna have ice cream, and that's gonna be my day. And that's what I did, and I set the intention. Where sometimes people go into those events, and you're like a crazy person running from here, there, and everywhere, just eating and drinking like a crazy person. Where I went in and set the intention, and I had a great day. And it didn't have any shame or guilt or anything like that because I thought about the outcome before the day even started. So I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, hit me up. And I know that it's really easy to get caught in overload. Like there's so much, people are like, you shouldn't have this and you shouldn't have, you shouldn't have wheat. You shouldn't have gluten. You shouldn't have soy. You shouldn't have Splenda. You shouldn't. And then you're like, well, what should I have? And then, you should have lean protein. You should have raw vegetables. You should have green juice every day. You should have sauerkraut. You should have good healthy fats. And you're just kind of like, taking it all in about all the shoulds. And so what I want you to think about is, like I said, it comes down to being, a detective or a criminologist. Yeah, a foodologist. That's it. Being a foodologist. And so you track your food. And I tell my clients, track your food for like a month, right? And then you do a check-in. It's kind of like your finances. At the end of the month, you look at your finances and you're like, oh, we spent a little too much on gas. Oh, we spent a little too much on cable TV. The same thing happens with your food and your body. You look and you say, ooh, yeah, I remember what happened here, and these are the changes I'm going to make. Oh, yeah, this was a good day. Yeah, I should try to figure out how to do more of this. And it's just, an analysis, right? Versus just plodding along, just thinking that you're behind, and thinking that you can't. You're just slowly, making improvements over time. And the next thing you know, it's a routine. It's a habit. And you're just doing it. You're just moving and grooving. And I want you to also think about your workouts, because so many times people will focus so heavily on their diet, but they're not working out. So I want you to, find that balance between diet and exercise. Now, if you're just starting out, I want you to pick your battles, right? What's the easiest win for you? Are you someone who's like, I can work out? And I want you to focus on working out. And then maybe focus on like one meal. Or if you're someone who's already great with the food, but you're not working out, I want you to focus on maybe getting in one workout a week. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's, if you, go into a yoga class, finding some way to move your body. But I want you to figure out, there is that, component of diet and exercise. Jack LaLanne says, what does he say? Nutrition is queen and fitness is king. And we all know when the queen's happy, the king's happy. And that's pretty much the framework. It's become that detective. Figure out what your habits are. Those habits build consistency. That consistency builds routines. Those routines build success. Easy is earned. So no more spray and pray methods. I want you to really start to get logical and methodical about this. And if this seems still like, oh my God, my head's like, whoa, let's have a conversation. You can find me at my website, fabfitsquad.com. There's a contact button there. You can also just shoot me an email at squadleader@fabfitsquad.com. Just put FabFitTV in the subject line, so I know that's how you came to me. And let's just start a conversation and ask away anything that you possibly have about, how do you kind of create this structured flexibility. I will be back on September the 25th. And I am going to talk all about how do you start prepping for the fall? How do we kind of set ourselves up for success so that we're not on the backslide for the holidays? As always, you can find me on Instagram at Kim Jefferson Coach. You can find me on Facebook at Kim Barnes Jefferson Coach. And you can find me at my website, fabfitsquad.com. Email me at squadleader@fabfitsquad.com. I hope you have a fabulous evening and enjoy the rest of September. And I'll talk to you on the 25th of September. Have a fabulous evening.